Brussels in lockdown. Belgian police make 16 arrests in anti-terror raids. But one of the suspected Paris attacks gunmen remains at large. The security and integration challenges of Europe's migrant crisis. And Meals on Wheels takes on a whole new meaning at a Nigerian restaurant. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. We begin in West Africa, where Mali is in the first of 3 days of mourning for the victims of Friday's attack that killed 19 people in a luxury hotel in Bamako. Neighboring countries Senegal, Mauritania and Guinea also observing mourning periods. 2 gunmen were killed and Malian authorities are searching for at least 3 suspects connected to the massacre. A police official says investigators have recovered evidence in the hotel from the deadly siege. A representative from northern Mali separatist groups says the attack was an attempt to derail a fragile peace accord signed in June with the Bamako government. The hotel was preparing to host the latest meeting on implementing the pact. 2 West African militant groups, Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb and its affiliate El Moura Bitoun, claimed joint responsibility for the attack. A U.S. defense official called the Hakim the leading suspect in the assault. 5 Malians were killed, 6 Russians, 3 Chinese, 2 Belgians, a Senegalese, an Israeli and an American were also killed. While Europe's most wanted man, suspected Paris attacker Salah Abdeslam remains on the loose Monday. So far, he has evaded a massive manhunt involving raids in and around Brussels. Security forces are now focusing on towns in eastern Belgium amid fears he might be trying to flee to Germany. Meanwhile, Belgian prosecutors say police in the capital have arrested 16 terrorist suspects in 22 raids. Prosecutors said at least 1 suspect was wounded during the raids. 19 of the raids were in locations in and around Brussels. Speaking at a news conference Monday, Belgian federal magistrate Thierry Verts says Salah Abdeslam, the main suspect in the Paris attacks, remains at large.
Jusqu'à présent, ni armes ni explosifs n'ont été découverts.
Until now, no weapons or explosives have been found. Salah Abdeslam has not been arrested during these raids. Because of the elements gathered within our investigation, we carried out these raids on Sunday evening. The investigation continues, and in the interest of it, we can't give any more details at the moment.
Nous ne pouvons pas communiquer plus de détails à l'heure actuelle.
Brussels subway system and its schools are closed Monday as worried residents face a 3rd day of lockdown and another work week overshadowed by the massive manhunt. For many Belgians, the security measures have made residents feel anything but secure.
I am totally worried. I've lived in Brussels for 20 years and I have never seen this. Walking the streets, I was stopped earlier and told it will be best not to walk in the streets now. It's making me panic.
Abdeslam is thought to have crossed into Belgium November 14, just hours after Islamic State gunmen killed 130 people and wounded hundreds of others in coordinated attacks in Paris. Belgian media outlets said police arrested 4 people late Saturday, 1 possibly wearing a suicide belt. But the federal prosecutor's office said later he could neither deny nor confirm the reports. Authorities addressing reporters Monday did not reference those reports. Well, in Cameroon, the terrorist group Boko Haram is accused of killing 10 people in a suicide attack over the weekend. Security sources say Saturday's blast occurred in the far northern region of the West African country. Cameroon joined a regional offensive against the Boko Haram group earlier this year. And in Central Africa, heavy rains, flooding and a spike in new arrivals could threaten the lives of over 110,000 Burundian refugees in overcrowded camps in Tanzania. That's according to multiple aid agencies. Those aid agencies, among them Oxfam, Save the Children and Helpage International, say they fear fresh outbreak of cholera, which killed 33 Burundian refugees in western Tanzania in May, as heavy rains sometimes make toilets overflow and floods shelters. Life-threatening malaria and diarrhea is also spreading through the camps. Now, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Well, coming up, the new challenges of Europe's migrant crisis following the Paris attacks. Stay with us.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
I'm Jeff Selden, and I work the National Security Beat. National Security Beat is anything that affects the national security of the United States, from counterterrorism to surveillance to even relations with Russia. It's one of the most fascinating beats you can have. It's probably one of the more important beats that you can cover because it touches on so many areas of the world, so many areas of people's day-to-day lives. I'm Jeff Selden, and my beat is national security.
Well, following the terror attacks in Paris, destination countries for migrants are living with the reality that terrorists might be taking advantage of the migrant crisis and posing as refugees in order to gain access to their targets and commit heinous crimes. In this next report, Channels TV correspondent Cynthia Are speaks with experts on how the migrant crisis should be addressed and the personal steps the migrants need to take in order to start over successfully.
Now, the current migrant crisis is clearly the worst the world has experienced since the end of World War II. And according to the International Organization for Migration, the problem is not with the numbers, but with the system.
So it is a complex crisis, but certainly is not the worst. In the past, we've been dealing with crisis, and we also had to find solutions for this crisis. I think what here is the crux of the problem is that we do not foresee solutions. It's not so much a crisis of numbers, it's a crisis of the system. It's the asylum system, if you like, it's the migration management system, if you like, that is being challenged, and not the migrants, the challenge. The challenge is our capacity to have a workable system.
Indeed, there's a problem with the system, particularly what to do with the migrants when they finally arrive at their destination countries. The same challenge was faced back in 1988 by this Ethiopian Vincent Makori, an asylum seeker turned private attorney, after having fled his home country due to crisis.
You know, that time when I left Ethiopia in 1988, there was a war and there were a lot of problems in the country. Young men like me were forcibly conscripted to the army. I was afraid that, you know, one day I'd either be forcibly conscripted or would have a problem with the government and being arrested. So my motive was to leave the country by any means necessary.
Nothing worthwhile fell on Vincent's lap. It was a pretty lengthy process.
And I applied for a government scholarship. I won that and went to Hungary to study. I decided to apply for asylum here. I did get my asylum, but couldn't get a job. Even though I had 3 degrees at that time. For some employers, I was overqualified. For some, I was less qualified. In any case, you know, I couldn't find a job as a lawyer.
Even though he couldn't find a job, Vincent was determined to be an asset.
I ended up doing a lot of things. I used to interpret, translate in offices. I decided to work as a parking attendant part-time. So trying to cover my bills.
It took him 15 years to fulfill his dream of becoming a lawyer, but despite his challenges, he deems the results worth the wait. While the International Organization for Migration has some advice for how to deal with the migrant crisis,
it is something that requires a much broader approach, There are 28 countries in the European Union. There are other countries that can lend their support, including the US, Canada, and others. So it does require a comprehensive plan of action.
Fitzim has some advice for the migrants about what to expect when they are accepted into their destination countries.
If the person who left the country has no skills, then it'd be difficult for him. But my advice for the individual is to prepare for the worst, to be mentally strong, and to not be frustrated because of the first or the 2-year experience that you will encounter. I didn't want to...
Well, for more on the life of migrants, Cynthia Ari of Charles TV joins me now here in studio. Cynthia, a nice story there, a very uplifting one.
Yes,
yeah.
Indeed it is.
But looking at, for example, the experience of this man, I guess things are getting worse and more difficult, especially for people arriving from countries where they might be suspected to be potential terrorists.
Well, according to, I'm going to quote what the Luca from International Organization for Migration said. He said that there's no need for panic, to say that this is a catastrophe, that it's not a crisis of numbers, it's a crisis of the system. In truth, the laws have become more tightened following what happened in Paris about 2 Fridays ago, and who wouldn't expect that to happen anyway, you know, for the laws to get tighter. But it's not something that is impossible to overcome at the end of the day. The protocol will obviously be a lot more difficult and probably lengthy, but at the end of the day, you know, it all comes down to the fact that it can be overcome, and as long as you have a mindset on what you plan to achieve, then things could probably play out in your favor.
Yeah, and it can be frustrating, but of course, knowing that a majority of the people do appreciate that many people who arrive actually running away from situations of war. They're themselves victims, and therefore they're not, you know, it's unfortunate to get them victimized twice.
It's the victimization, like you talked about, is a huge issue, especially when you look at Syria. I mean, that is where the majority of the migrants are pouring in from, obviously because of what's going on in their countries. But at the same time, we saw that one of the attackers in Paris did pose as a refugee and came from that end. So people always exploit that kind of situation, but you know, now looking at what's happening in the U.S. with the vetting process, which migrants will have to go through, you can see that they've been singled out along with people from Iraq. So it's kind of like, you know, giving them giving them a situation where they have to go through that victimization process twice. And that is just twice at the start of trying to get into the country compared to what is waiting for them. Because if they are eventually allowed, we understand that 50% of the migrants do actually make it into the country. If they're actually allowed, imagine what they're going to face in the hands of employers.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, having to be seen as a person who has to be double-checked, the background looked at, just in case, you know.
It's a case of hasty generalization. Yeah. But at the same time, as humans, especially after having that chat with Fitzim, I'm still optimistic that, you know, a lot of good can come out of this as long as people's minds remain relatively open, and that on the part of the migrants, they are persistent.
And actually, a majority of the migrants who make it up, those really work hard to not only better their, you know, their conditions, but also contribute to the general society right here, like in the United States, as we see with the
exactly, because I mean, he's a private attorney and he's doing excellently well. If I have to, I'm just looking for that term. So as long as we all have brains, we all have abilities inside of us. It's just some situations that keep those talents that we have boxed in. But as long as, you know, you can find some form of stability, then we might be admitting the next person that might even have the cure for cancer into the United States and not even know it, because they are human beings and they have a lot of capabilities inside of them.
And they have reasons to want to come over or to go to Europe. Thank you very much for sharing that story with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, Cynthia Ring, he's a correspondent with Channels TV of Lagos and Nigeria. Now, the 2015 United Nations Climate Change Conference gets underway next week in Paris. West Africa, evidence of climate change can be seen along the coast of Senegal, where some areas have completely disappeared off the map. Africa 54's Mel Bailey reports.
Each year, the shoreline of Senegal's 700-kilometer coastline erodes by about 1 to 2 meters. Scientists link the decrease to climate change, a topic policymakers are set to discuss at this year's climate conference in Paris. Many citizens and environmentalists are hoping the conference can bring about change in the wake of the coastline's destruction.
There were homes here, so many homes and a mosque. There were 3 more streets in the neighborhood, and the sea ate it all. The sea ate all 3 streets. Even where we're sitting, there were homes. Now everyone lives in Arafat.
Arafat is a town that was once 1 kilometer away from Chaolin, one of the most affected areas of Senegal by coastal erosion and sea advancement. Now, after a decade, the 2 towns are mere meters away. A Senegalese oceanographer links the phenomenon to global warming.
Climate change is marked by global warming, and when you speak of global warming, it relates to the melting of glaciers. Also, when temperatures increase, you have water expansion, which in effect increases the volume of water. So when you have an increase of ocean volume accompanied by melting glaciers, you have an increase in sea levels. When sea levels rise, it means that it takes up on the coast, and you then have sea advancement towards the continent.
Many locals say that the disappearance of parts of the community, including a cemetery and neighborhood mosque, has been very traumatic.
Imagine having to bury your father or mother, your sister or loved one, and you think they're finally at peace. And then you find their corpse floating, disturbed from its slumber. It's horrible. It hurts.
Government institutions aimed at targeting climate change say addressing the issue isn't the largest problem. Finding financing to help the affected population is.
One must argue that the priority and the vulnerability of Senegal really shows that help is an emergency. Senegal PNA, which stands for the National Adaptation Program, permits us to illustrate that the problem of the coast and the region is a problem more and more urgent, and it should get solutions. In the region of Chaolin, we saw that we had a cemetery that was completely underwater, and the population was displaced almost each year because of the sea. So we really had to do something with urgency and got those partners to help us build the embankment.
In Chaolin, an embankment has been built along the shore that keeps out violent waves for most of the year. But residents still fear for the future of their town. They worry that developed nations won't be able to agree on how to decrease the harmful emissions which cause such drastic changes to their shorelines. This is Mel Bailey for Africa 54, Dakar, Senegal.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. A Nigerian restaurant serves up a unique dining experience. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Mali, the country mourns following Islamic militant attack on Bamako Hotel, which killed about 20 people. Kenya, Uganda, and the Central African Republic are tightening security. That's ahead of the visit from Pope Francis following recent terrorist attacks. The health ministry in Guinea is beginning a countdown of 42 days to be free of Ebola after the last case, a 3-week-old girl, recovers. Finally, in Uganda, a social business tests biodegradable ways to make briquettes in an effort to burn fuel more efficiently and reduce carbon emissions. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Wherever you are, Voice of America is on air, reaching more than 130 million weekly, worldwide, in more than 40 languages. Online, social media, and breaking news from around the world. On the go, dozens of new features on popular platforms with new apps and trending topics. Voice of America, on air, online, on the go.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. There is a growing appetite for luxury in Vancouver, Canada, and it appears to be young, wealthy Chinese experts who are the driving force behind it. Businesses say the market for high-end cars and houses is booming, and large numbers of their clients are rich Chinese entrepreneurs who are making the city a home away from home. The luxury market for new vehicles has increased by 50% over the last year. Porsche sales alone are up 30% since the start of 2015. One next-up, luxury car brands Fiat, Alfa Romeo and Cadillac have unveiled new 2017 models for the U.S. auto market. The annual Los Angeles Auto Show is offering a glimpse of what to expect in car showrooms in the coming years. The L.A. show for several years focused on green power trends and alternative power trends. This year, the top trend is automation. Automakers are showing off in California because it's a hot market. It leads other states in new vehicle sales, which are expected to hit their highest level in a decade this year. Well, and in other luxury news, ever dreamed of owning a Batmobile? You can now make your childhood dreams a reality in Abu Dhabi. On display at the Big Boys Toys annual exhibition in the UAE's capital is a street-legal version of the superhero vehicle. Rich Boys Toys is the company behind making the Batmobile concept into a reality. Exhibiting in the UAE for the first time, the US-based concierge service acts as the middleman between manufacturers and clients looking to purchase exotic items. From tricked-out motorbikes to million-dollar drones, high-end exclusivity is one of the show's themes. And that is what is trending today. Now, waiters at Latitude Cafe and Lounge in Ibadan, Nigeria, have found new and innovative ways to carry meals and serve food. Africa 54's Esther Githui-Ewart reports.
It's a first in this West African country. In this southwest Nigerian cafe, waiters gracefully balance on two-wheeler hoverboards to ferry orders to hungry clients. Morakinyo Tight Bones is a consultant and the brains behind the Latitude Cafe and Lounge. He says the hoverboard has given the restaurant a business edge over competitors.
It's all about strategizing on your business. Not like I just want awareness for the business, like they just know there's a restaurant in the world that serves with hoverboards. And people just know, okay, let me go and check, and they leave and they don't come back. It's not like that. But when they come back, they get to experience the kind of services we render. You need an attraction for people to come in first. So when we get that kind of attraction, then people come in and they keep coming.
Hoverboards are gaining popularity fast in Nigeria and have become a growing trend worldwide. Oluwadamilare Tommy is a waiter at the Latitude Cafe and Lounge.
Sometimes, even on time, when this place is so crowded, we can't use it. But they'll be like, no, I want you to use it. I want you to use it. Please attend to me. If you don't attend to me, I won't get it. It's like, okay, we're going to try. The freaks out using it, something. They feel like, yeah, they're very special.
Nero Chiku, a 27-year-old entrepreneur, started importing hoverboards after seeing their business potential in the Nigerian market. Depending on the brand, hoverboard can cost between $800 and $1,000 US. Some are equipped with blue underlights, Bluetooth, and music players that make them even more attractive to potential customers.
Nigerians are open to things like this, so I just brought in the first batch to test the market, and it was good, so I just decided to. And so far, so good. It's been amazing. I mean, I've even inspired people to also start selling, bringing in selling.
With technology rapidly changing the world over, new ideas are popping up everywhere. Now, hoverboards, which are similar to Segways, have found their place in the market. They are built without a pole and handlebars. They are self-balancing and most can carry up to 200 pounds. Esther Githui-Ewart, VOA News, Washington.
Well, it's time for Monday's sports report. And here's Sunny Allen with the Side of Sports. Hello, Sunny.
Hello, Vincent, and sporting greetings once again to our Africa 54 viewers. The Sunny Side of Sports remembers three-time Olympic champion Marvelous Mal Whitfield of the United States, who died here in Washington at age 91. Mal won 2 gold medals at the 1948 London Olympics in the 800 meters and 4x400 meters relay, and another gold meters at the 1952 Helsinki Olympics. But his biggest legacy was off the track. After his athletics career, Whitfield worked for nearly 50 years as a sports ambassador in Africa for the U.S. government. Mal conducted sports clinics all over the continent, coached young athletes, and yes, was a marvelous goodwill ambassador who used his Olympic success to better the lives of young Africans. Here's a sunny side of sports salute to Haile Gebrselassie, who says he ran his final competitive race Sunday in the Great Ethiopian Run in Addis Ababa. The two-time Olympic champion, regarded as one of the greatest runners in history, was surrounded by well-wishers both before and after the event, organizers described as Africa's biggest road race. More than 40,000 runners took part in the Ethiopian capital. 42-year-old Haile Gebrselassie fired the starter's pistol to get the runners going and then joined in the race. He crossed the finish line barefoot in honor of another two-time Olympic champion from Ethiopia, the late Abebe Bikila, who ran barefoot on his way to the marathon gold medal at the 1960 Rome Olympics. Before the race, Haile Gebrselassie said it was a special moment to have a symbolic end to his record-breaking career on home soil.
Yeah, it is, especially here in Ethiopia. It's going to be this one as the last one. A little bit, just sad. I know, what can I do? It's over 28 years running. This will be, the last one here in Ethiopia.
Ethiopian star Haile Gebrselassie is one of the founders of the Great Ethiopian Run, which was held for the 15th time in Addis Ababa. I'm Sonny Young, and that's the sunny side of sports. Vincent?
What a run there. Thanks a lot, Sonny. And be sure to watch the sunny side of sports every Monday and Friday right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us here in Washington. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. This American English idiom does not seem to make much sense.
Jump the gun.
How can someone jump a gun? Let's listen.
You can't begin the project yet. You're going to have to wait until the plan is thoroughly developed.
Okay, I won't jump the gun, but it is difficult. I am ready to get started.
Me too.
If you jump the gun, it means you do something early or too soon. The saying comes from foot races. An official starts a race by firing a handgun. If a runner starts before the gun fires, we say he jumped the gun. The runner is then out of the race. In most situations, jumping the gun is not a very good thing to do. And that's English in a Minute.